Hello everybody and welcome back to another book review. I have 3 more books that I have read. To be honest, I read them a little bit a while ago, but I was moving from Tucson to Forest Hill and there were other things happening, so we're getting to them now. Also, do you like my Tucson tan line? I have a tan line. I didn't think I could get tan, but apparently I can. So, the first book that I read wasn't really a book, it was more of a play. Actually, it wasn't more of a play, it was a play. The next book I read was The Three Sisters by You Can't See That at All. The Three Sisters by Anton Chekhov, translated by Julius West. Now, I read that book, play, for the Storygraph Reading the World Challenge, where you read works that are translated from a bunch of different places. This one was for Russia. Now, I had the option of choosing between Russia and Ukraine, but considering I'm reading another Ukrainian book for a different challenge, I decided to go with Russia for this one. So we have The Three Sisters. Now, I'm not saying that it's the translator's fault on this at all, because I honestly don't know. I can't read Russian. I have no idea what the original sounds like. But this play is the worst, 30 pages? Sorry, the worst 63 pages of a play that I think I have read that have been published and are still in circulation. There's some other plays that are really good. So The Glass Menagerie, really short, really great. Water by the Spoonful, pretty short, really great. Zoot Suit, short, great. Choir Boy, short, great. They're all good. So the fact that this particular book, play, could not develop a plot is ridiculous. All of the plays I mentioned, they're short, and they all had a plot. They had a storyline that they followed. There was something that the people were longing for, that they reached out to go get. There's a problem that had to be solved. There's a climax. This book is literally 3 sisters wanting to go to Moscow, and then a bunch of men around them telling them how it can't happen. That's it. They don't end up going to Moscow. Apparently it's this whole elusive dream that you can't actually get in real life, but it keeps driving you, and dreams sometimes fade away. You can interpret it like that. I was bored out of my mind reading this. I give this play 2 stars. Not a fan of it. It was written in 1901, so it's in the public domain. So if you want to read it, you can, and you can tell me how wrong I am and that it's not actually that bad. Go for it. If that's what you want to do with your time, great. I'm glad that I'm done with that book. The next book I read was The Odyssey. I got this copy. It's the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the translation is by Samuel Butler. This particular translation happened inside of public domain time, so this whole book on the Kindle app was free, in case you wanted to read that. I didn't read the Iliad. I'll get to it some other time. I did read the Odyssey. The Odyssey is a long book, and I feel like it could have been shorter. This particular translation kind of bothered me because it used both Roman gods and Greek gods and goddesses. They mixed them up. And so when your main character's name is not Odysseus, the Odyssey doesn't really make much sense. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the etymology of the word Odyssey comes from this particular story and how it's a grand long journey. But I might be wrong. That might just be how I understand the word Odyssey. I don't know. I don't have a thesaurus. I do have the internet though, and I could look it up. I'll look it up and I'll let you know if I'm wrong. And you can look it up for yourself if you want the right answer. That way everybody gets some research in. This book was long for no reason. Well, actually there was a reason. So when Odysseus is on his travels, he gets caught up and he can't come home for a really long time. And his son goes out to look for him because there are a bunch of men trying to seduce his mother so that she can have another husband and they can have the wealth. I don't know about the whole Greek inheritance laws, but I see how this could be an issue. And so it follows the son as he goes out, and then it cuts away to Odysseus and why he couldn't come home, and we see all of his adventures. But then he comes home and he hides in waiting for a year. His supposed widow is in mourning for both her son and her husband. Her son comes back, it's all good. But I don't know why he had to hide that long. And I don't know why the hiding was such a large portion of the book. I do really like the fighting at the end though. I did like how everyone died. Everyone. I appreciated that. I think the only people saved were the cook and 2 nursemaids. And that was it. I appreciate that. I think that was fun. Also, the gruesome detail in which the Cyclops was eating the men and then was also hurt by the men really caught me off guard. That took it to a new place. I was not expecting that at all. I also thought it was fun to read this book and recognize, hear me out, the Percy Jackson references. I would see a name or hear a story, and I would go, oh, that's what Percy Jackson drew from, or Rick Riordan drew from, which was really fun for me. I enjoyed that. But that might be I was a nerd throughout my entire life sort of enjoyment. I give the Odyssey 4.5 stars out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this particular translation of it, mostly because it was free. The part that bothered me was a translation part and not a story part, with the mix-up of Roman and Greek names. Like, they called him Jupiter instead of Zeus, but Poseidon was Poseidon and not Neptune. Why? If you had stuck to just Roman or just Greek, I would have understood a little bit more, but you mixed it up, and that was a little bit weird. And the final book is Gender Outlaw by Kate Bornstein. Not gonna lie, this book made me cry multiple times. I read it the first time for class at Cornish, class that I was in when I had dropped out. So I didn't really finish it. Then I read it again because why not? And there are just some parts in here that really, really made me cry. And I cried even in the introduction, because she says, "Now, if anything you read in this book makes you feel wrong or small and weak, then please know that I said something wrong. This book was written many years ago, and the culture I wrote it in is not the culture in which you're reading it. So if you find anything to be personally insulting, please accept my apology and keep reading with the knowledge that your gender identity and how you express your gender are correct only when you feel they are correct." And for someone who doesn't identify with really anything, like, I feel like I'm both non-binary and I don't even know, because once you're not on the gender spectrum, you're no longer within the sexuality spectrum because your sexuality is defined by your gender label. And when you don't have a gender label, like, it all becomes confusing. That really spoke to me, because no, I didn't fully identify with anything, well, with some things in this book, but it's because I don't have a label that identifies with other labels, you know? And it's not because I don't fit in, it's because we haven't reached the point in which we have language for me to fit into. And that made me really happy. But this was just great. I can read the blurb for you. I'm really bad at reading out loud, but I can read the blurb for you. "I know I'm not a man, and I've come to the conclusion that I'm probably not a woman either. The trouble is we're living in a world that insists we be one or the other." With these words, Kate Bornstein ushers readers on a funny, fearless, and wonderful scenic journey across the terrains of gender and identity. On one level, Gender Outlaw details Bornstein's transformation from heterosexual male to lesbian woman, from one-time IBM salesperson to a playwright and performance artist. But this particular coming-of-age story is also a provocative investigation into our notions of female and male, from a self-described non-binary trans feminine diesel femme dyke who never stops questioning our cultural assumptions. Gender Outlaw was decades ahead of its time when it was first published in 1994. Now, some 20-odd years later, this book stands as both a classic and a still revolutionary work, one that continues to push us gently but profoundly to the furthest borders of the gender frontier. I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it to anybody who's thinking about gender, is confused about gender, is questioning their own gender, has had someone in their life question their gender. I basically recommend this book to anybody with an open mind, or someone who wants their mind to be opened. I really enjoyed this. There are some things in it that might be seen as problematic today, but like she says, things change, and the time in which this book was written is not the time in which you're reading it, and she acknowledges that, and that's something you also have to acknowledge when you're reading books. Now, if you can find me a better book that explores gender in the way that this book does, then let me know, because I'm all for reading it. But as far as the books that I've read so far on exploring gender and the idea of a gender that is not on the spectrum, this is the best I've got. This is what I have to identify with. So I'm gonna stick with it until I get something better. I give this 5 out of 5 stars. I really did enjoy it, and I do highly recommend it to anybody who's into that kind of thing. Those are the books that I've read. Trust me, in the time that I've moved back here, I've read so many more books. I've read this entire series, all of them, and then I gave the first 2 to my mother so she could read them too. In case you don't know, this is the Tamora Pierce series. So if you're looking for a book to read with a strong female lead, these ones, any of them, choose any of them. I'll go over them more because I have read them recently, so I will be doing a review on them. It'll be coming out and let me know what you have been reading, what you have enjoyed, if you have read any of these books, if you have any opinions. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm always looking for new things, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!